Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm here to speak in support of the amended version of HB 1375. It contains the verbatim language of HB 661, and that bill easily passed the House on a voice vote. It seeks to provide a right of action to seek medical monitoring in the event of significant exposure to toxins resulting from negligence on the part of a defendant. So if you live in Merrimack or Litchfield, which is one of the towns I represent, or the Seacoast, you know what it is to have your community exposed to high levels of toxins and to have to deal with the many consequences that follow from that. So in amongst the barrier concerns raised by such an exposure, environmental damage, loss of property values, etc., it's reasonable to think that an exposed person might be concerned about the long-term health effects that they or their loved ones might experience. And it's also reasonable to think that they might want periodic screening for any severe conditions associated with the exposure to increase the chance of early detection, and that they seek to have any negligent persons or entities responsible for that exposure bear the cost. So the amended version of the bill provides a roadmap that clarifies the rights and responsibilities of all parties involved in a claim for medical monitoring. It clearly states that exposed parties have a right to pursue a monitoring claim, but it also provides those who handle chemicals with a clear standard with which to comply. I've worked in manufacturing for 25 years. I think it's important to all of us that all the New Hampshire businesses and manufacturers have a solid foundation on which to operate. So the committee was careful to base the legal standard on the growing and consistent body of case law in this area, preserving the need for a plaintiff to show negligence and causation on the part of a defendant, and requiring that the plaintiff demonstrate an increased health risk from significant exposure that requires the monitoring for which tests exists. And so while the right to sue for environmental damage and loss of property already exists, the right to sue for medical monitoring is more nebulous because the health effects, cancer, things of that nature, have not yet fully manifested. This bill eliminates that ambiguity, and I hope you will support concurrence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is on the motion to concur with the Senate on passage of HB 1375. This will be a division vote. A roll call has been requested by Representative Thomas. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members will kindly take their seats.
Roll call.
Question before the House is on the motion to concur with the Senate on the passage of HB 1375. The chair recognizes Representative Hunt for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the sponsor of the underlying legislation, was put in for the Insurance Department, again, a very important bill to them. It's going to be very unfortunate that they have to lose that bill. But Mr. Speaker, if I know that all the rights and privileges this bill attempts to give already exist under current law. But what I also know, as a member of the Medical Malpractice Oversight Committee, that this absolutely will cause these monitoring devices, the prices will have to increase, physicians will pay more liability insurance because of the passage of this act, which is totally unnecessary. Would I now vote no on the pending motion?
The question before the House is on the motion to concur with the Senate on the passage of HB 1375. The chair recognizes Representative Cushing for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I'm appreciative of the work that was done by the House Judiciary Committee over a year and a half with 6 different subcommittee meetings and consultation with many stakeholders that resulted in the language that's included in this amendment. And Mr. Speaker, if I realize that the need for medical monitoring is acute for any family whose loved ones have been exposed to toxic chemicals in order to intervene at an appropriate time. Would I now support this concurrence motion and press the green button? Yes.
This will be a roll call vote. The question before the House is on the motion to concur with the Senate on the passage of House Bill 1375. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button or the A button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button or the E button. Voting stations will be open for 30 seconds. Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? The House will be attentive to the state of the vote. With 227 members voting yea, 105 voting nay, the motion to concur passes.